How to pass the Air Force 2 mile run. With me, Dr. Ray Peralta, physical therapist, run coach, cardiologist, and I've been at this for almost 10 years, helping athletes improve their speed, get pain free, and fitness goals and have goals. So, why the 2 mile run is important? So, the 2 mile run is primarily a cardiovascular test, test of your cardiopulmonary endurance. And it makes up for the Air Force for 50% of the whole scores. This test is twice a year now, the changes, and one of the tests must include the 2 mile run. And you can't just cram for a 2 mile run test, but you also don't need to live in the gym or live on the track or the road, running every single day of the week. You just need a smart plan and consistency. So the energy systems in a 2 mile run. So it's about 80% aerobic and 20% anaerobic. It may vary or so, but you can see the heart has to deliver oxygen and take away the waste product carbon dioxide to the heart and lungs. You breathe in and you breathe out the carbon dioxide, etc. So the fitter you are, the more oxygen you could take in, right? The more fuel you could give to your muscles in terms of the oxygen, and the more waste product you could filter out. But people who are less fit, they tend to have a lower ability to kind of process oxygen and carbon dioxide, right? So then they get winded a lot easier, right? So someone who's really fit can complete a 2 mile run and they're all smiling and happy, right? They're not completely exhausted or winded just because they have a fitter cardiopulmonary system, right? And how do you train your heart and lungs? You train it with cardiovascular exercise. In this case, cardiovascular could be anything that involves the major muscle groups, right? Running, even walking is cardiovascular. Now, for a lot of people, but walking's too easy. And then you have to progress it, make it a little bit more challenging. Swimming, biking, anything that's a continuous motion, even dancing is cardiovascular exercise if done. Now, again, obviously, there's different efforts. So common complaint I get is I can't run that far, right? This is a common problem I hear from all sorts of folks who don't consider themselves born runners. You can do the run walk method, right? You can still cover the full 2 mile distance doing run walk as you build up your fitness, right? Even if you're completely brand new, you could run walk. People can start run walking or taking the 2 mile, break it up. Maybe you walk every quarter mile, then you run every quarter mile, and just keep going back and forth to complete the 2 mile distance, right? So you don't have to walk only when you're done. You can start walking from the very beginning. You could have planned walk breaks as a strategy. It's not weakness to walk. And then as you get fitter, then you could do the continuous 2 mile run continuously. But in the very beginning, if you're building up your fitness, it's totally acceptable to do run walk method to build up your fitness so you can then tolerate the longer, do continuous running. So when it comes to pacing, when it comes to the actual testing itself, you want to aim for like a negative split. That means you complete the second half of the test or the race faster than your first half. This approach involves starting at a slower, more conservative pace to allow the body to warm up gradually and conserve energy. So 2 mile run, well, you start the 1 mile slightly slower, and the last 1 mile of the 2 mile run, increasing the speed and go all out towards the very end. So that way you're running the second half faster than you ran the first half. So when it comes to the workouts themselves, you want to not every workout's going to be at the red zone, right? Max effort, right? Some workouts may be at a moderate activity, and some workouts will be a very light activity, right? Easy zones, like easy, moderate, too hard, right? I'm going to kind of sped up through that. But when you're using this, the reason I'm showing you this is because I'm going to show you some sample workouts to do, and you're going to vary them depending on the nature of the workout. When it's like a speed or a track workout, it's usually going to be at the very hard category. If it's like a tempo workout or what's called like a fartlek run or lactate threshold workout, it's going to be in the kind of moderate to vigorous. So that green to yellow zones here in this table there. And when it comes to a long run, it's usually at the 2 or 3 light activity. Sometimes a long run can creep up into a moderate activity, but you can see these different categories here that will help you gauge your workouts. And when it comes to cross training, same principle also applies to cross training. Cross training is other cardio activities you do to help supplement your running, right? So you'll run a few times a week, but then you'll do cross training, which will also help boost your cardiovascular endurance, your cardiopulmonary fitness. So, for example, a sample training week here, let me just minimize my circle here, is you're doing on one time a week, you'll do a track or a workout. So this would be like 400 meter or 5 or quarter mile repeats. If you're not as fit, you may start with run walk intervals. It's the same premise. You just now, instead of like going all out, you probably just run at whatever you could tolerate. So it might be an easy or moderate run, but obviously you want to push yourself as you get more fitter to do the all out hard repeats or sprints. But maybe you start like a jog walk, then you go to a run walk, etc. as you get fitter. And then tempo run, same premise. You could either do it at the tempo, the moderate pace for 20, 30 minutes, or maybe you'll do a run walk at an easier pace as you build up your fitness. And then a long run, usually the long run is either 2 to 3 times the distance of your race. So for example, the 2-mile run, typically do a long run at 4 miles or even up to 6 miles. And yes, it could vary in between. I'll show you like a sample workout monthly plan here. Let me just advance forward. And then when it comes to run walk, there's different run walk intervals, right? You could do 1 minute on, 1 minute off, or in this sample workout, you have 30-second jog or 30-second on, 90-second off. So 30-second you'd either run or jog. And then for 90 seconds, you'd walk. And then you repeat that for a total of about 20, 25 minutes. The goal is just to start getting your body more fit to being able to tolerate covering more distance. Another sample where, the 1 minute on, 1 minute off, same thing. You do that for like 20 minutes. You can even do it for distance. Like, try to cover 2 miles and run walk there. And then another one is maybe you do a slightly longer interval of running and a shorter interval of walking. So this one is 2-minute jog or 2-minute run, 1 minute walk. Same thing, you do it for rounds, or you could do it for distance, for example, 2 miles or more. And so your job is not to sprint and die, right? It's not a 400-meter sprint, right? It's a 2-mile run, so you have to pace yourself, right? If you sprint out all at the very beginning, that's why I talked about pacing earlier. Your job is just to keep moving for the full distance, the 2 miles, at a steady pace, right? You can start a little slower as you warm up and then speed it up. And the speed will come once the habit and the distance and the consistency with the training is there, right? The more you practice, you stay consistent with the workouts. You don't just wait till the last minute to prep. You'll have an easier time completing the 2-mile run. When it comes to breathing, there's different types of breathing things. One, often breathing will come naturally, but if you need to pace your breathing, sometimes it helps to have a certain numeric cueing. So for example, you inhale for every 2 steps. So every time your foot hits the ground, like a cycle, like 1, 2 steps, and you breathe out every 2 steps. Another one's you breathe in for 3 steps, like so you hit your foot hits the ground, breathe in 1, 2, 3, then you breathe out for the other 2 steps. All right, so you could breathe in through the nose and then breathe out through the mouth. However, if you're like a complete beginner, it might be really hard to breathe in through your nose. You may need to breathe in through your mouth and nose, and then breathe out through your mouth and nose. But as you get fitter, oftentimes you're improving your fitness. You could breathe in through the nose, breathe out through the mouth. And if you're really fit, it's just in through the nose, out through the nose. But it's more of an advanced strategy. And you get more advanced, you could also experiment with different things, of course. But for beginners, I tell them, hey, try in through the nose, out through the mouth. And if you really need the mouth breathing, you can do both in and out. But try to avoid shallow chest breathing. That's why we're telling you pacing with the easy run walk, so you can start building up your fitness, because walking is a type of cross training for running, right? Well, you could walk, and then if walking is kind of easy, you could do incline walking, and we could do weighted walking, which we'll talk about in a bit. And also for your run walks, make sure it's conversational, right? So if you feel that you're huffing and puffing too much, maybe you go too hard, slow it down doing your training runs. So you should be able to hold a conversation with your battle buddy, with your air buddy, right? You should be able to have a conversation with them. So it's conversational. Next, another thing to do is just practice breathing on its own. So you can actually do breathing as an exercise. Big fan of box breathing, right? There's different ratios to this. There's a 4-second ratio. You see in the figure here. breathe in for 4 seconds. Right, and then do a kind of relaxed breathing. Try to do it through your diaphragm or your abdominal region, and you breathe out. You hold for 4 seconds, then you breathe out. You can see the nose and the mouth, so you can breathe out through your mouth for 4 seconds. You hold for 4 seconds, and inhale again for 4. And you just do that for like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. If you're like complete beginner, start with 5 minutes. Just start with 5 minutes. Try to do it every day. That actually helps. Even though it may seem like you're not doing much, just sitting still and working on box breathing actually helps improve your breathing for other areas, including running. So box breathing is a big fan of just doing a separate breathing exercise or breath work to help improve. It also helps to decreasing any panic, any like worries you may have. So you could just do this if you have like some anxiety about the run. You can even do this before your run to help kind of calm you down a bit, and then you could go into it. Boom. And then if you're somewhere at a place with altitude, maybe you're at a place that's like 5,000 feet or 6,000 feet, your times will be slow, right? Your pace may actually slow down if you're moving from a place from like at sea level to a place with altitude, and that's normal. Your body will take some time to adapt, right? So don't really, push yourself too much in the very beginning, right? Just be consistent. Use the RPE scale, right, instead of pace. Because sometimes people feel frustrated that now their pace is a bit slower than that altitude, right? Make sure you follow the effort scales we talked about, the conversational thing, and the hard intervals, right? So you could also use, hey, when doing hard intervals, maybe you only speak 2 or 3 words. Then as you get fitter, it may take a few months, and then you'll acclimatize to the high altitude. So for cross training, you want to cross train at least 2 times per week. So in this training model I'm going to propose is going to be 3 days a week of running and then 2 days a week of cross training. Right. So cross training could be brisk walking, incline walking, which is weighted walking, elliptical, stationary bike, rowing, stair stepper, even swimming in the pool. Right. All these activities, because cross training, typically they're about 30 to 60 minutes or so. Rucking, here's me holding a ruck. There's different models of rucks. Right? But the idea is that you're doing a weighted walking. Obviously, you want to have the proper attire here. See, I'm barefoot, but if you're going to go out for a ruck, have your supportive shoes or hiking shoes or boots, whatever's going to support your feet. Obviously, you want foot support as well. And then bring your hydration with you. So rucking could be done like once a week or every other week. It could actually sometimes replace a long run. So maybe you'll go ruck for 4 miles or something. You could start very light, maybe 10% of your body weight. So if you, let's say you're 150 pounds, you start with like a 15 pounds in your ruck there, and then you get fitter. You could slowly increase the weight in your ruck. And this is a great way to build your fitness, and it's lower impact than running. Even though you think it's you're like, hey, you're putting extra weight on your body, it's still less impact stress than running. A lot of people don't realize that running can be high impact, which oftentimes causes a lot of overuse injuries in people who are not used to running. But rucking can help build up your bone strength, your body's resilience, and can help supplement your ability to kind of run. It'll make running feel a little easier as you get stronger, right? It can help kind of give you some endurance there and enhance your posture. Another thing I hear from a lot of people say, hey, I can't run that fast. I'm a bit overweight, right? Obviously, when you have extra weight on your body, it makes running harder. That's nothing to do with a personal opinion. Like, it's just physics, right? If you could look at the fastest runners, they're leaner. So you don't have to be extremely lean, right? You also need to drop like 50 pounds all at once, right? You can slowly start decreasing your weight. Maybe start with like 5% of your body weight or 10% if you're overweight. And you could also add walking to help you get into better shape and better fitness. Obviously, you also want to eat healthy as well. So, proper nutrition. But when it comes to exercise for weight loss, right, if you're really trying to do this to maximize the benefit of exercise, aim for 300 minutes a week, which is about 5 hours a week. So this could be like an hour, 5 days a week. Right. And this can also include your run training, right? Don't think it has to be a separate thing. So you can include the run training as part of your 300 minutes per week and include your cross training as part of the 300 minutes per week. And oftentimes you just find that you just need to do maybe an additional 2 weekends of walking or something to help get you to that 300-minute per week goal. However, if you find that you still need more activity, sometimes you do 400 minutes per week or even more, right? So don't just say, hey, I'm going to just stop at 300. If you're like really trying to be like overachieve and really get leaner, you could obviously do more activity if tolerated, right? If your recovery levels permit. And also in terms of walking, if walking is too easy, big fan of just going on a treadmill, right? Doing incline walking or walking up a hill or walking upstairs. It's another way to make walking more challenging to help add to overall like fitness. This is going to help you burn calories, going to help you burn fat and get you leaner, especially if you're overweight. Now, if you're dealing with certain types of injuries, right, maybe if you're prone to shin splints, common in new runners, people who just don't run that much, who try to jump into too much volume, right? A common mistake is only running with your unit or your squadron. So instead of doing big jumps, right, obviously you want to be consistent, keeping a basic level of fitness, right? Run walking 2 to 3 times a week, making sure you have the proper footwear, right? You're not just wearing like Converse or Vans, you're having like the type of proper running shoes, that they're comfortable for you, they're just supportive for your feet. And the other thing is you can actually strengthen your feet. I'm a big fan of doing calf raises. This helps with shin splints. And there's also toe raises, which is not picture, just the opposite motion where you raise the toes. Here I'm holding a kettlebell. You can hold weight. You can hold a dumbbell. You can even do it with a barbell on your back if you're a fitter. You do it with a rucksack on your back. There's different ways to add weight to the calf raise. Essentially, you train your calves or your lower legs 2 to 3 times weight. That also helps to decrease your shin splints. And then I'm also a fan of doing it barefoot. Obviously, be careful of dropping weight on your foot, but barefoot also helps strengthen the small little muscles of your foot. All gym rules, of course, a lot of gyms don't permit barefoot training, but if you're at home, you can train barefoot as well. Low back pain. A lot of times people who are at risk for low back pain is often from being too tight in their backs. I'm a big fan of doing back stretches, as you see here, especially if you sit all day. If you have a job where you're sitting all day, it's very important to stretch your back out every few hours. So a big fan of doing this cobra stretch here. And you can also work on core strength. I'm a big fan of bird dog for core strengthening. If this bird dog is too easy, you can hold like a dumbbell in your hand or a kettlebell. You can even do it with a resistance band. There's different ways to make the bird dog harder. Then obviously you can do the planks, front planks, side planks, and glute bridges. For core strengthening, you can do this 2 or 3 times a week to strengthen your core. Another common problem is people who wait till the last minute to train, right? A lot of times it's like, oh, my test is in 4 weeks, I'm gonna try to cram it, right? If you're somewhere at a place with altitude and now you have to like go from maybe you're in the past, maybe you only used to running 1.5 mile run. Now you have to run 2 mile run. That might be a bit scary. But obviously, if you prepare yourself by preparation, you can make yourself fitter and your cardiopulmonary fitness, right? So again, I recommend 3 times a week of running or run walk method, 2 times a week of cross training cardio, and then 2 times a week of strength training. This can also include the core strengthening, or even 3 times a week if you really love strength training, but at the minimum twice a week of strength training plus core strengthening. That way you're going to have a good overall general fitness. So then when it comes time for a 2-mile run, you'll be fit enough to actually go crush that 2-mile run instead of being worried about it because waiting to the last minute. Typically, I recommend having like a 3-month training block. So 3 months prior to the test, really ready. But even year round, you should stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I love this phrase, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. So it's like freaking out to the last minute. Keep yourself in good general fitness year round. So when it comes to the test, right, you could ramp up leading up to that test, right? So you don't have to like really worry about it and freak out. So I have a 3-month plan here. You can see 2 and 3. So week 1, right? Again, I have the 3 key workouts: the track, repeat, tempo run, long run. And you could pause this. You could look at the weeks, right? So it depends on your goal pace. So if your goal pace is a 7-minute per mile pace, then you do some math. There's calculators online where you can determine that 7 minute per mile would be a 14-minute 2-mile run, right? So there's like, oh, that's excellent. I want that. So cool, then you could use that. But it should be realistic to you, depending where you're starting at, right? If you're like at a 12-minute per mile pace, it might be more realistic to try to get down to like a 10-minute per mile pace and then a 9-minute per mile pace, right? Like don't jump at this all at once. I also recommend testing your 2-mile run at the very beginning. So set a baseline. So at week 1, it's not shown here on the table, but you also want to test your 2-mile run. So test it at the very beginning, see where you're at so you can be realistic. So like, okay, maybe it took you 18 minutes to do 2-mile run, right? So like, okay, cool. Now let's try to get a bit faster and then see where you could work from there. And then obviously the goal is to try to get you a bit faster, but don't make a big jump, right? Don't go from like 18-minute 2-mile run to like 10-minute 2-mile run. Maybe it's more realistic that you go from like an 18-minute 2-mile run to a 16-minute 2-mile run and so forth. Right. So it's more realistic usually to save like 2 minutes versus like a big, 5 or 10-minute gap. I'm not saying it's not completely impossible, but let's be realistic about your goals, hence doing a baseline 2-mile run. Anyhow, you see the weeks here. Week 4, it's not pictured here, but on week 4, if needed, it could be a deload week, right? You can make it a little easier. So even though it shows these workouts that look pretty challenging, you could do it at easier paces, right? So instead of doing them at the tempo run pace or moderate pace, you could do it at a easier pace. Same thing with the long run. Same thing even with the intervals, right? You could actually, instead of like sprinting the intervals, you could just jog the intervals on week 4 if needed as a deload, if you need to take it a little easier. And then cross training. The cross training is actually minutes here, so it'd be like 10 minutes easy, 1 minute hard, 3-minute easy. I'm looking at week 4 here. You can see my mouse, and then 5-minute easy, right? So the tempo or the cross training, it will vary in intensity. You'll have like easy effort, moderate or tempo effort, and then hard efforts, and kind of vary it. And then kind of same pattern kind of goes for like 1 of 2, just the distances increase. You can see a long run starts increasing with like a 6-mile long run. Again, if this hard, you could walk the long run. And same thing even with the fartlek run or tempo run. If you're like, fartlek is a new word to you. Fartlek just means kind of a speed play. So it's a type of interval where maybe you run from one tree to another tree and then you take it easy or jog or even walk if you need to. Or you could run from one lamppost to another lamppost. You're just using different markers on the course to vary your run, right? Or even if you want to use time, you could vary every 5 minutes, you change the pace, all right? You could just randomly vary it with the fartlek run. Cool. And another cool thing with the fartlek run, you can also incorporate calisthenics. I'm a big fan. Okay, maybe you'll run for like 5 minutes doing a fartlek run, then you'll stop for like a minute or two, do a set of push-ups, and then you run again, then you stop for a couple minutes, and you do a set of crunches and so forth. So you also do fartlek run with calisthenics as well, so you can kind of help build strength and endurance. Then we go to month 3. Month 3, then you want to test your 2-mile run again, see the progress you've made. Yeah, okay, cool. Let's see where you're at. So you could see we have some workouts leading into it. And then week 4, we take out the long run and then do the 2-mile run just to test your fitness there. Right. And then ideally this would be during the test that you're being tested for. So like it's you time it, right? So you time this kind of training plan to coincide with the date of your fitness test. So you're like, okay, cool. Your fitness date time is like sometime in March or whatever the month is. And there you go. You set plan ahead so you're not running. So give yourself again a good 3 months to really build up to optimizing your 2-mile run performance. And obviously look up your desired times that you need to hit depending on your age and gender. So you don't need to be a born runner. You just need a plan you can actually follow. Walk every day. Use a run-walk method. Mix in some cross training. As you get fitter, you can do continuous running. And be consistent, right? Again, don't just wait the 1 or 2 months before the test. and the 2 mile run will stop being so scary. So, and if you found this useful and you need additional help, right? You're like, man, I want some run to one-to-one run coaching. I'm a run coach and physical therapist. So you could click the link in the description below. We can find a time to book a call. I'm offering like free consult calls for people who want to improve their running performance, or if you're dealing with pain or injury. I also help people on the pain or injury side of things as well.